A federal judge just made a decision that affects the sensitive data of 340 million Americans. Your Social Security information hangs in the balance. In this video, we'll break down Judge Ellen Hollander's critical ruling against Doge, what it means for your personal information, and the future implications for Social Security beneficiaries nationwide. You'll discover exactly how this legal battle impacts the massive database containing information on nearly every American citizen. Stay until the end to discover how this ruling affects your benefits, what protections are in place for your data, and how you can get free assistance navigating Medicare's complex enrollment process. This isn't just another government story. It's about the security of your most sensitive personal information. Welcome to Financial Area, your trusted source for breaking news and analysis on retirement security. If you find this information valuable, hit that like button and subscribe to stay informed on everything affecting your financial future. A federal judge named Ellen Hollander recently made a decisive ruling that has significant implications for Social Security beneficiaries across the country. The judge extended a temporary restraining order against an organization called Doge, effectively preventing them from accessing the massive Social Security database that contains sensitive information on approximately 340 million Americans. This ruling didn't come out of nowhere. It represents the culmination of ongoing legal battles over who should have access to some of our most private personal data. Doge had been seeking access to this database, which contains everything from your Social Security number to earnings history, benefit information, and other highly sensitive personal details. The organization argued that access would allow them to provide certain services, but Judge Hollander's ruling suggests that the potential risks outweighed any proposed benefits. The legal basis for this decision centers around protecting the integrity and security of this vital national database. What makes this ruling particularly notable is the scale of what's being protected. We're not talking about a small dataset. This is comprehensive information on virtually every American citizen who has ever interacted with the Social Security system. The judge's decision reinforces the principle that access to such sensitive information must be tightly controlled and only granted under strict conditions with proper oversight. The restraining order specifically blocks Doge from bypassing normal vetting procedures that typically include rigorous background checks, training requirements, and ongoing monitoring of anyone who can view or manipulate this data. These protocols exist for good reason. In an era of increasing identity theft and data breaches, your Social Security information is some of the most valuable data that could fall into the wrong hands. Judge Hollander's ruling essentially reinforces that these protective measures cannot be circumvented, even by organizations claiming legitimate purposes for access. Let's put the scale of this database protection into perspective. The Social Security Administration maintains records for approximately 340 million people. That's more than the entire population of the United States. This massive dataset contains not just basic identification information, but comprehensive financial histories, benefit calculations, medical information for disability claims, and other highly sensitive personal details that could be devastating if compromised or misused. The current security protocols for Social Security data are multi-layered by necessity. Anyone granted access must typically undergo extensive background checks, complete specialized training on data handling procedures, and have their activities within the system continuously monitored. These safeguards aren't bureaucratic red tape. They represent essential protections for what amounts to the financial identity of nearly every American citizen. Judge Hollander's ruling reinforces that these protocols must be strictly maintained without exceptions or shortcuts. When it comes to sensitive government databases like this one, proper vetting is non-negotiable. Individuals with access to Social Security information have the keys to Americans' financial kingdoms. They can view earnings histories, benefit payment details, and personal identifying information that could enable identity theft on a massive scale. Background checks help ensure that those with checkered histories or potential conflicts of interest aren't placed in positions where they could exploit this data for personal gain or malicious purposes. The risks of improper access extend far beyond theoretical concerns. If organizations like Doge were granted database access without proper safeguards, it could create vulnerabilities in the system that might be exploited. Data breaches at this scale could affect millions of beneficiaries, potentially disrupting benefit payments, compromising personal information, or even enabling fraudulent claims. For retirees and disabled Americans who depend on their Social Security benefits for basic necessities, the consequences of data mismanagement could be immediate and severe. The continuous monitoring of who accesses this data and what they do with it represents the final critical layer of protection. Even well-intentioned users with proper clearance must be held accountable for how they interact with sensitive records. Audit trails, access logs, and regular reviews help ensure that information is only being used for legitimate, authorized purposes. Judge Hollander's ruling effectively maintains these accountability measures, ensuring that if Doge were eventually granted access, their activities would remain subject to the same scrutiny as any other authorized user. It's important to understand that Judge Hollander's restraining order against Doge is temporary in nature. This means the current protections preventing access to the Social Security database aren't necessarily permanent. In the coming months, further court proceedings will determine whether these restrictions remain in place or if Doge will eventually gain the database access they seek. This temporary status creates a period of uncertainty for both the administration of Social Security and the millions of beneficiaries whose information is contained within these protected systems. If Doge eventually succeeds in gaining access to the Social Security database, several scenarios could unfold. The organization would likely be required to implement stringent security protocols, but any expansion of access inherently increases risk. New personnel with different training standards and organizational priorities would suddenly have visibility into sensitive records. Even with the best intentions, this transition could create vulnerabilities during implementation. Beneficiaries could potentially see changes in how their information is handled, how quickly claims are processed, and how easily corrections can be made to their records. The broader implications for Social Security operations cannot be overstated. The agency's systems were designed with specific security parameters and user access protocols. Introducing outside organizations changes this carefully balanced ecosystem. Staff would need to dedicate time to monitoring new database users, potentially diverting resources from processing claims and serving beneficiaries. Response times for benefit questions, application processing, and appeals could be affected during any transitional period. These operational considerations rarely make headlines, but directly impact Americans depending on timely Social Security services. The debate around third-party access to government databases extends far beyond this specific case. Privacy advocates argue that each additional entity with access multiplies the risk of data compromise, while others suggest that carefully managed partnerships can improve service delivery. This tension between security and accessibility isn't unique to Social Security, but the stakes are particularly high given the comprehensiveness of this database and its importance to vulnerable populations. The Doge case may set precedents for how similar requests for government database access are handled in the future.